Greetings and welcome to the Comics Coffee Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Don Cardenas, and today's guest is someone I've been wanting to have since essentially day one. But as things like this go, it's taken forever for me to either feel confident enough to ask that he'll come on, or just making the concerted effort to make sure I get all the people I really want to sit down and have a conversation with on. But regardless to say, this gentleman's work is long as storage, from DC to Marvel to Image to creator-owned work. You know his work. You know who this is. Phil Hester, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Don. Thanks for having me. I saw those guitars behind you. I thought you were going to, play me on.
I should.
I thought you had, devised a riff just for me.
Maybe I will. I will make things more complicated for myself whenever I can. So
yeah,
maybe that's a new thing. I'll make a custom riff for everybody.
Yeah, that's a great. See, I've already made this whole interview worthwhile with my
exactly
insights.
But yeah, like I said, Phil, you're one of the first pros I ever got to know online, and thankfully, I still know you.
Yeah.
And I haven't scared you off at all. But it's, from the few times we've met at C2E2, I've just been wanting to have just sit down with you and just have a nice long conversation, because, you've done so much work that I've enjoyed, and as so many other people have enjoyed. And you also have this just intense passion for comics still. And even though we disagree with your assessment of your skills, we all look up to you. We all think that you're killing it. You're all I have Kingdom of Monsters here, the collection here.
Oh wow, yeah, I see that.
Issues of that. You draw one of my favorite Angarises. I mean, he's my my favorite non-main kaiju.
Right.
So it's I was pleased to see that one of my favorite pros have drew one of my favorite kaiju in one of my favorite ways, because it can go 1,000 different ways with the way some people draw Godzilla and his friends. But yeah, so
it was a fun gig.
I've already lost the plot here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to talk to you about so many things, like your art collection and just even your approach now and all that. But first things first, Comics Coffee Metal. What are you digging right now?
Well, we talked a little bit ahead of time about how I don't drink coffee. So,
yes. But you are a soda enjoyer, and I am very much a soda enjoyer. So what's your poison these days?
I'm so pathetic. I'm down to I had a heart event 8 years ago now, and I had a day when a doctor said, "You're done with salt, sugar, and caffeine. Those are not part of your life anymore." So I wasn't one of those people that drank Monster Energies all day or anything, but I was drinking Diet Coke all day, and so I had to scale back. So now I'm down to Diet Orange Soda, which is pathetic. But I'm chemically Mormon at this point in my life. But but occasionally I will still enjoy an Earl Grey, a good, really extra bergamot kind of Earl Grey is my hot drink of choice.
And as when it comes to soda, I'm a diet soda person myself too, and not because I'm I feel like it's any more beneficial to me health wise. I just
it is though more. It is. I mean, no matter what my wife's always talking about how bad fake sugar is, and it's bad, but real sugar is way worse.
Yeah. And one of my favorite sodas actually is caffeine-free Diet Pepsi. So I have this thing that if the doctor's ever you got to cut your caffeine, I'm well, at least I know I got that.
Yeah, that's your safety net.
Yeah, and that's something I've always liked, because my grandma, when she was alive and she lived with us when I was younger, that's the soda she got. So whenever we were out of our sodas, I would sneak down,
sneak grandma's. Wolfer.
her place and then like this steal a couple of hers. And then I developed the taste for it. But yeah, I'm definitely a soda appreciator. I was the guy, popping a Diet Pepsi at 7 in the morning. That was my coffee,
Yeah,
and
I was in the same boat.
uh and my lovely wife just she could not handle it. She's like, I can't with you
Put her
drinking the
foot
soda
down.
this early. Like she got it. It's just like for something with her, like that just didn't work for her. I'm like, okay. Then of course I'm like, probably shouldn't be drinking soda at 7 o'clock in the
Yeah,
morning. So then I switched to tea, and then it wasn't until like my mid 20s I had finally had a coffee I liked, and then that's all she wrote. So
yeah.
um,
People that are into it are really into it.
yeah, I try to skirt the line because I definitely have a tendency to um you know get my special interest and like just dive way too into it and just
Yeah.
burn out. So I try to keep a healthy relationship with it. We recently got a Keurig. I bought her one for my wife one for Christmas. They had a cheap one, those little mini ones. And right now I'm drinking the Robert Downey Jr. brand Happy coffee. And
Oh, okay.
um, I've never had a good cup of coffee from a Keurig,
Hmm.
and that still stands. This is okay
But can you
though.
get an okay
It's
one?
okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's working in the pinch. As I mentioned to Phil earlier before we started recording, I was not. I didn't have a great night's sleep. I'm kind of dealing with the after effects of getting my COVID booster, which I don't regret getting, but it always kicks my ass. But I needed a little extra boost just to
Right.
make sure I'm as alert as possible. But yeah, so I came around the coffee, but I easily fall into just being a soda guy. It's really easy. I've been trying to like do more seltzers, and I can do certain seltzers. There's one that comes in a bottle called Topo Chico.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Um, the lime one is just the problem is though it keeps getting like out of stock in our area,
Yeah,
and so it's like if they just had that in stock all the time, I wouldn't worry about
you'd be
buying any other
happy.
sodas. I would just get that. But anyway, so metal. You were kind of telling me before we started recording that when you're coming up and you're a teenager, it was all the hair metal. It was all
Yeah.
sure,
Like
thrash and
Van,
all that was around, but hair metal and glam metal, that was the big thing. And then you
it was
had
like
like your
Van
little
Halen,
Oasis.
Def
Yeah.
Leppard kind of era.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I don't want to disparage any of that music, but like
No.
I was very like anti-establishment when I was a teenager. And like
Yeah.
even like AC/DC was the establishment, like when I
Hmm.
was in high school. So I was eager to hear anything else. And like at the time, Judas Priest was sort of like the last bastion of like metal, and I was into
Hmm.
them. And that's when they had their probably their biggest hit, and
Yeah.
when they had their "Screaming for Vengeance" album, and and also that album cover really spoke to me. It, like
Yeah. I mean,
as a comic book artist,
yeah,
and
it is probably one of the best album covers
it's so
of all
awesome.
time for sure.
Like it's pure like it's like they saw into the psyche of like a 15-year-old boy. um,
Yeah, for sure.
so and that's like the first concert I ever went to, and it's like the most
Oh
metal
wow.
thing I ever did. We totaled a car on the way to
Oh,
that concert,
and you
got
still
out
went
of
to
the
the
total
concert.
car, and got another ride and made it to the concert anyway.
Oh geez.
Um,
Wow.
Not from any sort of
You're
chemical thing. We were just bad drivers because we were like 15.
oh
Um,
wow.
but yeah, and then so like after that, like when I was in college, it like Metallica wasn't really a thing yet. Like it was sort of a fallow period for metal, and
Hmm.
industrial sort of filled that niche, you know. So I was really into like bands like Ministry or Skinny Puppy or Front 242, you know, just
Okay.
like that in kind of industrial heavier sound,
Yeah.
and that sort of filled that gap for me for a time. And now um, it's just sort of like if I hear something and I think it's cool, like if I hear Coheed and Cambria and I like Coheed and Cambria, and like
Yeah.
that's like the only thing I really can't like truck with is the Cookie Monster stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like the closest I can get to that is High on Fire. You know, that's just
Okay.
like,
Okay.
that's as
Yeah.
close as I get to like non-melodic singing that I can hack.
Okay.
And that's, I mean, it's when you come up on Judas Priest, like
I mean,
Halford's like
yeah.
the best singer ever in metal. Um,
Yeah.
it,
Everything else is just a
yeah, you want
pales in
singing,
comparison.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's sort of where I stand with metal. But like I
Okay.
said, I'm a 57-year-old man, so I like I have to stumble on things to be into them. Like, because like we were talking before, the metal community is so like balkanized into their own camps. Like you'll have
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you're into like Icelandic sludge metal. Well, I'm into Swedish
Yeah.
sludge metal. Like that's not real.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I just sort of take what comes, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, I can find something to like about you know most genres, and that includes metal.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things I love about doing this show is because whenever I do talk to someone who's really into metal, I learn about bands I've never heard of before, and
Yeah.
I like to take some sort of self pride in that I'm open to a lot of things. I will listen to just in metal alone. I will listen to things as quote unquote mainstream as Metallica. They are my number one favorite band of all
Hmm.
time. Even when they're not good, I still love them. It's just what it is. To stuff that's more has more electronic influence and has more of I mean, from to symphonic metal to doom metal to
Yeah.
sludgy metal to death metal and deathcore is something that's I'm really getting pulled into a bit. One of my favorite bands that are new is called Orbit Culture, and they are very much like they kind of straddle that line where they have those really low growling aggressive vocals, but he also sings, and he
Uh,
sings like and Justice for All era James Hetfield, which
okay.
is
Yeah.
like catnip to most of us. He's got that
Right.
snarl to him, and there's a
Kind
lot
of
of
almost
melody to the
spoken word.
music.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I totally get though your the entry point being for Cookie Monster vocals being kind of just difficult
Yeah.
because that
It's
was
a
me for
little
a
much
very
for
long
me.
time.
Yeah.
That was me for a very long time, and it took bands like some symphonic metal bands, because most symphonic metal bands, at least for in the early 2010s, you would have the operatic female singer, then
Yeah.
you'd have the male vocalist who does the low growly,
Right.
aggressive stuff. So you would be kind of like spoon fed it a little bit, so you can kind of used to it and all that.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I just ended up really just being drawn to some of that stuff, even trying to do it myself and things like that. Um, and so yeah, there's definitely stuff like you mentioned, like I mentioned for our mutual bud, Brian Chirilla.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff,
Like
I know
Trilla
his
just
number one.
laughs at like whatever I consider metal.
Yeah, it's funny because it was fairly recently. He messaged me and he's like I'm listening to the first three Metallica albums for the first time ever. I'm like, you've never listened to them, like,
Huh.
and I realized like that just he was already like
Yeah.
neck deep into like cattle decapitation and, and stuff like that and
Yeah.
Cannibal Corpse and all that. So I'm like, all right, cool. But yeah, there's definitely that wide range. This is also what I love about comics because we have metal and comics. They can be anything we want it to be.
Well,
You know, we,
that
we
reminds
can
me. We used
incorporate
to
it.
Brian and I used to do a book together called The Anchor,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we would put a soundtrack in the back of every one of them, and I would put like the stuff I thought was heavy, and then
Hmm.
Brian would jump in with whatever like like
Yeah.
child murder soundtracks he had.
Whatever bands with song names you have to like censor out.
Yes, yeah. They all like have incinerator or decapitator or yeah,
Some sort of side.
yeah.
Like yeah, it's
I felt, and
yeah.
that's what made me feel like the oldest of anything in my life to date was when we gave our soundtrack recommendations.
Well, did you ever get into Static X since you're
No,
into
no,
Ministry? No,
mm-mm,
okay. No, they're not
no.
your thing. Okay.
Yeah, no. I mean, not like I'm against it or
Oh,
anything. It just wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because not that they are like Ministry, but they have that electronic industrial
Right.
component. And there is this screaming, but it's more,
No, I've heard it. It's just, yeah, it just
yeah, yeah,
hasn't really grabbed me.
Um, what else was I gonna say? Did you ever like did you like Rob Halford's industrial project?
Oh
Tim, I believe
yeah,
it's
yeah.
called
Oh, for
Fight.
sure.
Which one was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
think
forget which one was the industrial one.
two.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when it was just TWO, that stuff he did with
Yeah.
9 Inch Nails kid. Um,
Yeah.
uh, that's like one
Was
of
there?
my favorite of his songs. Period. Is like
Okay.
the single that came off of that record.
Nice. Nice. Well, I will give one recommendation just based on is the band Gojira.
Okay, I will try them.
Um, I would definitely try their Magma album. That's the one that got me into them because earlier in their catalog they definitely have a lot more of the guttural, like
Uh-huh.
low vocals. But there's something about his vocals in the Magma album. It's much more melodic. It's much more singing.
Uh-huh.
And even then, like when he is screaming, it's not I'm affecting my voice to be
Right,
scary guy. It's
right.
I'm screaming because I have to scream right now.
He's
And
not
it's like
trying to.
there's like a
He's
feeling behind it,
right.
that
He's not like
that
the
I really
guy.
connected to.
He's not like the executioner in like a JC's haunted house.
Yeah,
Big,
yeah,
big
yeah,
grumbly
yeah,
voice.
yeah. Yeah, it's not George Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse. Just just goes into that monotone
Yeah.
thing. There's definitely a dynamic to it, and their music's really good. It's groovy. Their songs aren't like ridiculously long, and a lot of the riffs and grooves. The drummer is probably one of the best metal drummers out there right now, just because he has a lot of he brings a lot of just like really funky jazz kind of influences the stuff he does. And I'm a big fanboy for them. They're like my number two
Okay.
band of all time, and
All
they
right.
quickly rose to that setting
If
from
it's
that
you, if
Magma
it's
album in
your, if
2016.
that's it's if it's your number two, then I will check him out.
Yeah, Gojira, Magma. I can't recommend it enough. So okay, well, what about comics? What comics have you been digging lately?
Oh, I'm well. I I still read comics, but I'm also like hopelessly behind on all my comics. Like I'm
Well, yeah,
so
that's a given. That's a given with
yeah.
anybody
Like I'm
here.
still not done with Immortal Hulk. Um, I like the example I always give people is I started reading Starman when it was over.
Yeah.
Like when the last issue came out, I was like, okay, now I'm going to start reading it. Um,
Uh,
but I know I'm biased because I just work with Tom King, but uh, that Helen of Windhorn book is really something else. It's really pretty incredible. Um, I'm also in anticipation of the second volume. I'm rereading My Favorite Thing is Monsters, uh,
okay.
which is really just like kind of a singular. It's every once in a while somebody will come out with something. You're like, where did this person come from? They were like
Yeah.
at home honing their skills for like 20 years, and then they just like unleashed their masterpiece on the world. Um,
Yeah.
and then it's a weird story, but when Harlan Ellison died, I bought his estate auction. I bought his collection of Thunder Agents comics from the
Oh,
60s.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm going through and reading all the Thunder Agents books, most of which I've read because I wrote Thunder Agents back in the day, so I had to read up on them, but I didn't go from like page one, A to Z, page
Yeah.
one to the end.
Yeah.
And I'm going through that right now, reading Harlan's copies. So that's
Nice.
a lot of my reading right now.
I don't have an extensive collection at all. I have maybe 1,200 books from growing up. I mean, I had more when I was younger, but I've gotten rid of a lot of them. A lot of my purchasing quantity was the quarter bins and
Yeah,
all the Extreme Studios stuff and all the Image stuff that was just like quickly dumped into those cheap bins that I've either torn up or gotten rid of or whatever, just withered away. But I was recently transporting them into a hard shell case as opposed to like the little flimsy
oh yeah, that's what I
boxes.
need. Yeah,
Um, and then I'm like, I'm going to start, going through things I want to keep, things I don't want to have, because I just don't have the space for it. And, I'm not going to sit down and reread so much of this stuff. No offense to whether I enjoyed it or not at the time. It's just the reality of the situation. And I just found myself just like wanting to sit down and read up all of X-Men 2099 again, and
Right.
all of, because that was like, for me, that was like my book that I feel like people don't talk about this book enough. It was so good, and all that, and the mid '90s X-Men era, which was like, again, my generation's uh, main cultural touchstone, I guess, considering how we're
Yeah.
all way too excited for that animated show to be coming back this year.
It really is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. I still can't believe they're actually doing that, but I'm like, all right, I'm excited for it. I guess I got to start rewatching it again.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Um,
if it's just a that's the biggest thing for me, like in terms of what's going on in the industry right now, is to just watch these kind of waves of nostalgia come through that I wasn't a part of. You know,
yeah.
like I'm too old for Turtles. Like I just missed Turtles by like in GI Joe by like 3 years.
Hmm.
I'm too old for them. But it's heartening to see people like uh, beyond nostalgia, like hang on to their love, their genuine enthusiasm for those things, and to like express how it shaped their creativity by using that creativity to reinterpret those characters. And that's the same thing I'm doing when I'm like working on Batman or Spider-Man or whatever. It's like those are the things that turned me on when I was a kid, so it's natural for me to like sort of express at least some of my creative energy that way. And like the perfect example for me is Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers book. Like
Yeah.
I could care less about Transformers. Like that's like I'm too old for that, so it doesn't mean anything to me. But I have like all the respect in the world for Daniel, and to see like him like really get into his groove on that thing and like really bust out all of his creative chops, I can connect with
Hmm.
that. So
Yeah.
I try not to. A lot of old guys I know write things off if it wasn't part of their youthful experience, and that's something I try to fight against. Like, okay, so maybe I wasn't into Turtles, but this creator working on it is intriguing to me, so I'm going to check it out. Same thing with
Yeah.
Thundercats. Same thing with Transformers. All that stuff. So you, it's like it's sort of like exercise. You have to like actively try not to become a curmudgeon, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Well, no, I understand it a bit of both ways. I'm 41, so I'm seeing, up and coming creators in their early 20s talking about things that I'm like, that was past my time already.
Right.
And and people who's like, oh, this is my first comic. I'm like, that came out in 2004. I'm like,
Right.
oh my god, that was 20
Yeah.
years ago. And then just things like that. And but on the flip side of it too, like I've tried to like, as like the best example I can think of is a few years ago, Jeff Parker and Mark Laming, they did King's Watch.
Yeah.
I think it was Do Dynamite.
Yeah.
And I give absolute zero shit about any of those characters.
Right.
But I like Jeff. I like Mark.
Yeah.
I think they're both great. And I gave it a shot and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing like you. You're like, I don't care about Transformers, but I like the creator. Let me see what they're doing with it. And it was
Yeah.
fun. And I was so glad that I had it there to read and enjoy and develop some sort of, affinity for the characters. Like my only real touchstone for any of those characters was the Phantom movie with Billy Zane. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's my relationship with comics in general, though, is
Yeah.
like I'm not following characters at all. I'm
Yeah.
following creators. And like if you had told me that when I was 13, like if you said, "Hey, 40 years from now, you're not going to subscribe to Spider-Man," I'd be like, "You're insane," or "You're
Yeah.
not going to read every issue of X-Men." I would think that was crazy. Um,
Hmm.
but as you grow, your tastes change, and
Yeah.
um, you start to recognize what you loved about those things in the first place were what the creators were bringing to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd rather follow those creators and see what they have to say next. And sometimes that takes them out of superheroes altogether. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was lucky that I was a teenager in a time when like the indie explosion was really taking place, and so
Yeah.
you got to see all these people that up to that point would have been consigned to working for Marvel or and DC the rest of their life, doing their own thing, and that was really
Mm-hmm.
exciting to see. And it sort of led me to a larger love affair with comics in general instead of
Yeah.
just superheroes.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, I came after that. I started reading comics, I think, like a year after Image hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there like right when everything was like at its most ridiculous in terms of like
Oh, for sure.
speculation. But even then, it was at 93, 94.
Yeah,
Even then, there was such a, uh, a deep love from whatever I would read or talk to people or see of that indie boom that it definitely like put something in me to where it's like, okay, well, these are just as valid as Wolverine.
right.
This black and white independently made comic, I can enjoy this just as much as, Maximum Carnage or whatever. And
Yeah,
though I've, eventually went away from comics and art for a while, when I came back to it, I realized like that's more what I was drawn to. And just getting to know other creators and stuff like that. Like I mainly read independent comics. I mainly read my friends' books, and I'm super happy about that because I have a lot of really talented friends who make really,
yeah,
really awesome books. And I can't, I try to dip my toes into the mainstream stuff here and there because it's interesting. Like when New 50, even though it's been 10 years now
yeah. So you're old.
plus, New 52 happened. I went all in. I started reading. I was never a DC guy, and I tried it, and I think that's what really cemented my. I'm a creator. I want to follow creators, not
Yeah,
necessarily characters, and so I think that's everyone has their taste. Some people were like, I could care less the name of the person who's doing my Spider-Man as long as it's my Spider-Man. Like
yeah.
that's
It's. I
cool.
mean, and
You
hey,
know,
more power to them.
yeah,
As long as they're buying the books, I'm okay. But yeah,
yeah. Buy what you like.
It's
That's it. Buy what you like, and you know,
it's so wild to me
that's
to meet people like that at shows though who think you're retired because you hadn't worked at Marvel for 10 years. You know, you've been working at Image or DC all that time, and
yeah,
they don't know what you've been up to because all they care about is Marvel. You know, and that's I mean, come to this art form however you want. I'm not going to judge it. It's
yeah.
just if you were like that into it, I would think the logical next step would be to follow creators and not characters. You know.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And hopefully more people start to see that. Especially these days, I can't. I listen to a few podcasts. My buddy Patrick Bauer, he owns Challengers Comics in Chicago. He has a great
Great
podcast where they
story.
talk about their business and all that. And it's interesting to see where things are going and stuff like that. So, um, I think at some point the most pessimistic part of me is just like Marvel DCs are just going to be feeding whatever media
Yeah.
they're going to be doing. And sure, there'll be breakout things from people who are getting a chance to do something, but more often than not, it's always going to be reset to match the movies
Yeah.
or whatever. So, I'd rather spend my time reading cool, fun books like, Skeeters from Kelly Williams and
Right.
Bob France and Kevin Cuff, or, anything Scott Brian Wilson puts out, or, anything Matt Lesniewski puts out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, but, like you said, you, you can't read comic, you can't like read comics wrong. Like if you enjoy it
Yeah.
and you buy it, great.
I mean, that's to me,
You know,
that's the coolest thing about the landscape now is it's really we're sort of in the depths of this like narrow casting era of comics. Like
mm-hmm.
everybody can find their comic now, but because
Yeah,
everybody
yeah,
can find their comic now, nothing is going to be huge, huge, huge the way it was.
yeah, yeah,
When I was a kid, like I wasn't particularly into Conan, but I bought Conan every month because it was the comic that was out, and I
Yeah.
wanted to read comics. And
Yeah, I mean, what Marvel had, what, maybe 20 books?
well, it varies, but what I'm
Yeah.
saying is like now you can credibly be a comic book fan and never read superhero comics at all, never read
Nope.
North American comics at all,
Hmm.
um, never read manga. You can you
Hmm.
can do all those things and call yourself a comic book fan because there's a ton of material out there that is just like so specialized or so
Yeah.
narrowly focused that you can get all your needs met by a handful of books now instead of having to like take everything in like when I was a kid. And I think
Yeah.
that's cool. I think
Yeah.
it may
That
prevent
that is.
it may like prevent the next like big breakout hit from ever truly going wide, but
Hmm.
it's sort of what's happening to music now too. Like, you
Yeah.
know, everything's in its own
Yeah.
camps.
Yeah. It's what was end stage capitalism, I guess,
Yeah.
what they
Well,
call it. But
I mean, you can find your
it's,
people. That's what's happening now.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think like you can find your people.
yeah, 100%. And that's my favorite thing about comics and music is I can find the stuff I like and people are making it, or I can make something and people can like it, and hopefully it's something they've been looking for,
Right.
and things like that. So, and that's what, that's where my interests lie now these days with, whatever I make. I'm I'm just doing it because that's what I want to do, and I'm hoping people enjoy it. And as long as it doesn't cost me money to do it, I'm going to be
Yeah.
doing it.
That's
Even
really
if it
the.
does seem like a capital still, anyway.
I mean, once your
Yeah.
thinking gets beyond that, when you start strategizing about what's going to succeed and what's not, that's like the beginning of your death as a creator. Like
Yeah.
when you're like,
It's not fun.
what?
It's
When
well,
you try to craft a hit, you're like
yeah.
you're almost like developing a split personality. You're walking out of your own body as a creator instead of
Yeah.
trying to make the thing that you want to see or read. And some people are
Yeah.
lucky in that the things they want to see and read resonate with a lot of people and become hits. And
Mhm.
some people they just don't, and that's
Yeah.
how it is. And
Yeah.
or I think I'm in this second camp, which is like sometimes things resonate and sometimes they don't. But I can't let chasing the things that break wide be my lodestone. It has to be me in the middle making books that I care about. Otherwise it'll start to, I don't know. Maybe people will catch on, maybe they won't. But if I like start chasing hits, I will, like I
Mhm.
said, I'll be walking further away from my own creative body, and that
Yeah.
sounds like
And
a recipe for disaster to me.
it is. It's I'm obviously I'm firmly like an independent creator. I've never done work for a big company or anything like that. But even when I've tried to like, what's my next thing, and I try to like think about it too analytically as opposed to like just what do I feel like doing,
Yeah,
you know, it sucks the fun out of it. It sucks the passion out of it. And it just becomes, I
yeah,
might
it'll
as well
become a
just be
job.
entering numbers on a spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Yeah. And no shade to anyone who loves entering numbers on spreadsheets. Good for you. But it's the type of thing where it's like, I want to do my own thing. I'm in a position in my life to where I can just do my own thing. I don't have to worry about uh it being a major hit or nothing. Again, as long as it's not costing me money,
yeah,
like to do this, I'm gonna keep doing it as long as I can. Um and when Steve and I were first, developing Evie and the Helsings and all that, originally Steve had envisioned it to be a much more comedic book, much more of like a uh kind of like the first Buffy movie, almost like just
oh,
very 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 comedy heavy with
right,
this, like I think his original pitch was like, Buffy meets Spinal Tap kind of thing.
uh-huh.
But in talking about the characters and developing it, and Steve and I, we wear our hearts on our sleeves. We're sappy guys, and we just kind of fell in love with the characters. And we're like, well, we can't like all these other more serious things came up with the book and all that. So
Right,
like we were more attracted to the drama of a lot of it as opposed to the silly parts or the humor parts or whatever like that. So though I think if I get my way, Steve and I will be introducing at least some of that and some other things. But anyway, but yeah, we're following what we wanted to do. Because if we thought, oh, we'll make a horror comedy book and it'll be great, people will love it, and we like, you know, who knows? One of the best examples I think is Ryan Brown,
Oh yeah,
and he
he
did
is
God
just
Hates
himself.
Astronauts. Like, yeah, the Kickstarters were like just astronomical on these things, and then Image picks it up and it doesn't sell. He does a collection, gangbusters, and now
Yeah,
all of a sudden, they got 8 billion genies. This huge deal with Amazon. Well deserved. Ryan's a great dude, great creator, as is Charles Soule and all that. But it's just one of those things. They did what they wanted to do,
yeah.
and
He got there by being
sometimes it worked
himself.
for him, and sometimes it didn't.
Yeah, he
And
got there by being himself. And if he had like
yeah,
a lit agent whispering in his ear, they would say, "Don't make
yeah,
blast furnace." you know,
yeah, exactly.
don't do that. they would,
Yeah,
but because he did that, and because he did God Hates Astronauts, like his, I think he's like one of the funniest people in comics. Period. Like his comics are the funniest. Like right up there
yeah.
with Kate Beaton, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And it's because he's himself. Like
Yeah,
from hanging out with him. That's Ryan. you know.
yeah. Uh, my favorite thing to say about Ryan is the first time any one of us really met him was Challengers was holding the 24-hour comic book day where you would sit down and,
Yeah,
and a bunch of us would just stink up a comic shop trying to draw
it's
24 pages in a
torture, by
day.
the way.
And Ryan showed up or whatever, and he drew this comic, and we are like, where the fuck did this guy come from? Like, this is
Yeah,
hilarious. Like, what is this? And then like we're reading God Hates. It's just like one of those things where it's like he just blew in on a wind from Michigan,
right.
and just kind of like immediately like just like took over everything. And it's just like, but again, he's a super great guy. And he busts his ass, and I'm glad to have the success he's gotten, the success he's had
He deserves it.
for that. And on that topic, we have some questions from the social medias. So let's jump right into one of them, and the
Oh
first
God,
one is
no.
from Austin Hamlin.
Oh no.
Who are some up and coming creators people should be on the lookout for?
I think young Austin Hamlin is a writer to watch out for. No, I know Austin. Anyone in the Midwest comic scene has sort of probably run across Austin, and he's like Ryan. He's like this guy that's doing like his own thing, and it's just like a matter of time before it like clicks with the right people and sort of spins out into its own like big thing. But I'm always watching like I think like despite Twitter being like a cesspool, um,
Hmm.
and BlueSky less of a cesspool, but um, the best thing about all those places is you can like catch people as they're growing as artists and like
Yeah,
watch them go from, oh, this person's not there yet, but they're interesting, and then see that in 6 months they're incredible. You know,
yeah.
um, like like Danny Earls is a great example of that. He's somebody that was
Hmm.
like, oh, this guy's like he's got promise, and then like a year later he's everywhere.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and you can see that Laura Helsby is that way too. Like a lot of a
Hmm.
lot of people don't know Laura yet, but they have a really
They will. Yeah,
interesting style that's like I can see it's like embryonic still, but I
yeah,
know like it's like 5 months from becoming incredible, and
yeah.
I think that's great with I think that's a great thing about Twitter. And it used to be you have to like go places like the Pencil Jack forums or whatever to like
Yeah,
see
digital
people like
webbing.
put or
Yeah,
DeviantArt or whatever. And now
yeah,
it's a little more democratized, and also like the power of the retweets is pretty amazing. Like you can retweet somebody, and like if the right editor or publisher sees it, they'll
yeah,
like get work from it. And
yeah.
so as much bad stuff comes from Twitter, I think it's all worth it because of like the art sharing opportunities that come up from it.
Well, I think with Twitter especially, there was such an ingrained uh, foundation from the comics community in there that even though it is a cesspool now, it's still got plenty of people who are just excited about comics and sharing art and
Yeah.
doing those things. Blue Sky's trying to get there, but
It doesn't quite
it's
have
weird.
that critical mass yet.
Yeah, I can't speak for like the engagement levels because I've never had a consistent level of any low or high of engagement levels with anything on either platform. But yeah, but it's definitely thing like well the Danny Earls thing. I came across him when I think Gail Simone
Yeah.
like was like, why isn't this guy hired yet?
Yeah. I mean, I saw him before
And
that, but
yeah.
and I was like saying, "Yeah,
I'm sure
you're going
you
to be
did.
amazing," and he was amazing.
Yeah,
He became more amazing.
yeah, and for myself, I see guys like Kyler Clodfelter.
Oh yeah,
I feel I think he
he
just
did.
needs to be put in the game. I
He's
think.
just it's just a lucky break here or there that he's waiting for.
Yeah, and
And
there's plenty of great writers.
it's hard to communicate that to people because like you want to think it's all hard work and you want to think it's all talent, but even super talented people and hardworking people need a break.
Yeah,
And like the talent and the hard work are there to shore up the opportunity you're given, and they make you ready for that
hmm
opportunity. But you can't make those opportunities happen. Um,
yeah,
you just got to be ready for them. And Kyler's definitely a case where he's like just like a tiny hair's breadth away from making it.
yeah. Exactly. He recently had someone shared a flash image he did doing like the Akira slide with just
Oh yeah,
running or whatever,
I know what you're talking about.
and that started a whole new thing of like people just coming to him and also Kyler's a great dude, and I really hope it's just like that baby's breath away of just
Yeah, I think it is.
taking off. And like you said, no matter how talented you are, you need that. Sometimes you just need that little break. My favorite example of that is a few years ago, a book came out called Ghost Fleet
Yeah,
by Donnie Cates and Daniel Warren
and they
Johnson.
were like not known then. Neither one of them were known.
And they didn't even get to finish it.
Yeah,
It was supposed to be a 12-issue series. They didn't even get to finish it. They had to like do the sixth issue digitally, and
right.
because it wouldn't sell. And then what? Less than 2 years later, that book probably, if they came together on a book, it probably would have been the number one
Oh, for
number one book
sure,
in
for sure. I mean,
it's just
I have a story
yeah.
about Daniel like that where I tried to get him. I wrote a short story at DC, and I'm not going to tell you which one because I don't want any sort of judgment on the people that did work on it.
Mhm.
But I tried to get him as the artist, and he was already feeling like he only wanted to draw his own stuff. And he goes, "But I'll do it
Yeah.
with you." And DC was like, "What the hell is this? Like, we can't print this." And I even said to my editor, "I'm like, in 6 months you won't be able to hire him, you know, and
Yeah.
in 6 months he'll be too big for you." And that's the way it was. Like 6 months later, I
Yeah.
mean, they did hire him to do his own thing, to write
Yeah.
and draw his own stuff. But like, they were scared of him at first, and they just weren't. They didn't have their antenna up for what was to come.
People take note. Just listen to Phil. Just listen to
For
Phil. He
real,
knows.
I'm always
He
right.
knows. He's always see, there you go. There you go. Next one. Well, next one's from the aforementioned Kelly Williams. No questions. He just wants to say hi.
Hi, Kelly. I didn't see
Um,
him. We always run into each other at in Wichita, and he wasn't there last year. But his stuff's really, like you said, Skeeter's looks really great. And
yeah, that's completely his wheelhouse,
yeah,
and Kelly's been a great friend to me because he's definitely sent stuff my way. Like one of the books I'm working on now was something he was going to be working on, but he just didn't have time for, and now that's what I'm doing. But getting I even got a chance to work from his layouts and stuff, which is really fun because Kelly just Kelly and I, you know, you don't think, oh yeah, those guys meshed together, but it's just really
yeah,
fun, kind of just like you know seeing how he's approaching things, and then like it's definitely changed me, I think, for the better, at least with that book. Just embracing a bit more of the just the great expression he gives everybody
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Everything from Kelly definitely feels like organic, hand
Mhm.
hewn comics.
Yeah,
Everything's got
yeah,
that sort of like like organic itchiness to it that
Yeah,
is perfect for like horror comics.
yeah, and especially something like Skeeters, which is like the
Oh yeah,
best, the best 80s, you know, splatter fest
yeah.
you never saw. Like it is, I totally just hear synth lines playing, John Carpenter type synth lines playing in the background when I'm reading that book. Um, and my favorite thing about it is when people actually print Kelly's, watercolors, and they don't overly saturate it or contrast it, and you
Oh
can see the
yeah.
brush strokes and you can see this stuff. And but yeah, Kelly's great. And another person I think, he's on the list of people where it's like, if I win the lotto, like I'm hiring him to draw stuff for me.
Oh, same
you
for
know.
sure. I would write a book for him in a heartbeat.
um next one is from good old Land Pitts. uh he wants to know if I know your story about The Fugitive.
Oh well, I don't know if that's. I think
It
the
may not be
story he's.
appropriate.
Um, I my wife and I conceived our child after a viewing of The Fugitive.
Okay.
Is that? I think that's what he wants me to say because we. I don't know what we did. Like I remember, I have this like freakish memory for meals. Like I remember
Hmm.
like where I was. I remember what other people had if we were at a dinner together, and like I also remember every theater I've ever like every movie. I know what theater I saw it in, and
Okay.
I know we. I know we were trying to conceive.
Hmm.
We started trying to conceive the night of that we saw The Fugitive, and it worked. I think
uh,
that's a story. If that's not the story, I really revealed a little too much. But if that is the story, that's what I think he wants me to tell you.
well, thanks, Lan.
I
now I
think,
now we all know.
yeah. Now
um,
everyone has this like everyone has to have a mental image of me having sex. Sorry, world.
Next question is from sorry if I mispronounced your last name, Phil Ubing, Uebbing, Phil Ubing.
Hmm.
He wants to know, what is your most recent favorite metal album or band, if specific album is too narrow.
Yeah, I don't know. I like it. Like I said, it's hard for me to say. I think like the last metal album I bought was well. Do you guys count? See, I don't even know with you people. Is Queens of the Stone Age a metal band to you?
I mean, some people would say no. I would say yes, just
Or
because
Baroness?
just the stuff you hear on the radio
Yeah.
is like their most commercial stuff,
Yeah, but
and if
like
you go
it's
into
not
the
their fault for
albums, it gets pretty nasty. Like,
it's not their fault for
you know,
writing a hit, you know.
no. I think they definitely fall into oh, I think
It's
desert metal
because
or desert rock,
it's
people
because
called
he's
it,
good
or
looking.
whatever.
That's why.
Yeah. I think there's enough fuzz, there's enough just random fury and screaming and stuff. Like I
Yeah.
think it falls enough into
No,
that.
I bought a Mastodon record recently. I bought
Okay.
a Baroness record recently. Um,
Okay. Well, yeah, those are firmly in the metal camps too.
I am, but like right now, I'm completely enthralled by like post rock now. So
Okay.
like I can listen to Explosions in the Sky all day, or Godspeed You
Hmm.
Black Emperor. I can listen to that
Yeah.
stuff all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely the purists out there who are like, this is metal and this isn't, but like, there's so many subgenres these days, and it's
Yeah.
like it's enough. Like, if you know I don't know where I would draw my line for metal. It's just by feeling, you know.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and even then, it's a subjective thing, It's or
Yeah.
yeah,
And you see the
it's
same sort of thing in hip hop too. Like it just gets
yeah.
so chopped up. Like people from different scenes don't think the other scene is
Hmm.
legit, and that's a way to is. It, but I guess that speaks to the passion people have about the genre. Like,
Hmm.
um, but anytime it makes you sort of insular, it's I think a waste of time. Like
Yeah,
I feel that way about
yeah.
comics. Like you can be so into like one kind of comic, or one style of comic that like you close yourself off to like really cool stuff happening, outside of the genre you like. Like
Hmm.
at any time I go into a comic shop, I'm buying stuff from Fantagraphics. I'm buying manga. I'm buying Marvel, DC. I'm buying the mini comics I see on the counter before I check out.
Hmm.
Whatever's there, because the comics I loved when I was a kid trained me to love comics, not
Yeah.
Green Lantern. you know.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Our last social media question is from good old Kirk at Big Five Army. He wants to know: did you collect art before entering comics as a pro, and do you collect comics on anywhere near the same level as you do art?
Um, I have a huge comic collection. I could start a retail store right now on the back issues I have, um, and I still buy a lot of comics. And I want to say I started buying art at almost the exact time I started getting work in comics, but that was super young. Everyone should know
Yeah,
that was like at a time. It was during the black and white explosion when the Turtles came out,
yeah,
and so like I was still in college and I was not ready to be working, but there were so many really terrible publishers that needed art, and so I got hired when I was not ready, and I started working in comics, and also the CBG was out then, and for the people that don't know, that's the Comics Buyer's Guide, which was sort of like both the industry trade and sort of a fan magazine pre-Wizard
yeah.
that came out every week. It was a newspaper. And in the back, they used to run ads for original art. And you could buy original art without seeing it. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. I bought a page without seeing it for like $35. And it was a Ron Wilson Marvel 2-in-1 page. And then it was just so enchanting to me. It was seemed like comic collecting plus. It
Yeah.
was like deeper version of comic book collecting. And then I bought a Jack Kirby page from the back of the CBG. And then when I started getting work from Marvel and DC and doing conventions and making money at conventions, it, like the math there seemed really really
Yeah.
sweet to me, because like, oh, I can sell like five of my pages and go get one Wally Wood page, you know, or I could sell two of my pages and go get, whatever. So that's when I really started getting into it, was when I started doing the con circuit.
Okay. Is that Ron Wilson page? Is that something you still have?
Oh, sure. I've never sold well, I have sold art. I've sold two pieces of art out of the almost 600 pieces I own. I've
Oh,
sold
okay.
two. One of them paid for my daughter's wedding. Um,
Okay.
it was a Frank Miller Daredevil page. And one of them I really was just hard up for cash. But I've traded pages away, but outside of that, I haven't sold a page. So if I bought it, I still own it for the most part.
Oh, okay. Okay. 'Cause I was going to ask if there's any pages that you let go or traded that you either regretted or like felt like, no, I got the better end of this deal for sure.
I feel like I've always got the better end of the deal. I still miss those pages, though. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a sickness, I think. But like,
Mhm.
this poor guy, he's a really talented storyboard artist in Hollywood, and I owned a Toth Batman sketch, and he really, really wanted it. And I was like, I really don't want to sell this. It's like you rarely see Toth draw Batman. I'm
Yeah.
not going to get rid of this. And he came back and he said, how about I give you X dollars, which was a fair price for it, and I will
Mhm.
give you this Mike Mignola Hellboy page. And I was like, I can't really do that. And then he kept bumping the number until it was probably four times what the page was worth,
Jeez.
plus the Hellboy page. And I was like, I can't say no to that. So I let it go. So yeah, I'm not, it wasn't equitable. I feel bad about it. Well, not totally bad, but I do miss that
Yeah.
Batman sketch, you know, still I think about it.
But on the flip side, though, I mean, clearly he was somebody who was like willing to, just had such a deep need for it himself that he
Oh,
was
for
willing to
sure.
go that crazy for it. You know.
Also, I
Um,
have like 12 other toasts, so I'm okay.
yeah. Okay. You'll be okay. You have enough. You have
Yeah.
quite a few toasts then. You also collect sketches and commissions and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, is that something you is the feeling collecting art up like pages the same as getting commissions,
No,
or is it like two different itches?
I'd rather have a page because
Okay.
a lot of the times I'll have a well, for one thing, I'm keyed into storytelling, so storytelling is important. Like if I'd
Mhm.
been thinking about this as like a lucrative hobby when I was younger, I would have been buying terrible covers. You know, like when I was in my 20s and 30s, I've been buying bad covers because covers are worth more. But I would
Yeah.
rather have like an interesting page to me. So, and also certain pages have like a resonance to me as a reader.
Hmm.
Like the pages I will never get rid of are like I own a John Byrne page from Marvel Team Up that I bought um, while I was staying with my grandpa and grandma one summer. You know, and so like I can see that page and I'm like right back to that time when I stayed at my grandpa and grandma's over a Fourth of July holiday. You know, um, or uh, I have a Swamp Thing page that I remember the first time I saw it when I was a kid. Like I remember where I read that page, and like to own that page, to be the only person that can own that page is like kind of like close to sort of magic to me, you know.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the first time I ever saw like original comic art, and it was at this hotel convention near Chicago. Um, and the first like original art pages I ever saw in person were Steve Scroyce Age of Apocalypse pages. I
Oh
think the
wow.
what was the book he did? X-Man.
Hmm.
And
I filled
that
in
was the
for him
first
for
time I
like three
realized,
pages of X-Man once.
and I think they're selling them. I think at the time they were selling them for like $100 each or something.
Yeah, and that probably seemed
And I'm
crazy at the
like,
time.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, but I was just like so enamored with like, it was the first time I realized like, oh, they draw bigger.
Yeah,
Oh, they, and all these things. And I was just so flabbergasted with it. And eventually the guy told me like, I have to like leave because I was just like staring at it for too long. But, you know, was there any pages? Cause, especially older art pages and stuff like, there's so much work on them,
yeah,
be it even they have like, notes on the side
I love
or,
that stuff.
zipper
Yeah.
tone and stuff like that. Is there any page that you have that you kind of like, like you discovered something uh
Oh yeah,
that you wanted to learn how to do, or you just kind of or just kind of blew your mind a little bit of like how they did
yeah.
something?
That, what's really cool is I own a couple of. Well, there's two things that stand out to me. One, I own a Wally Wood page from the Outer Space Spirit for the that short period at the end of the Spirit when Wally Wood took over the art chores. And um, there's a page that I own a page that was heavily redacted because the bad guy was deemed too close to being Hitler. So like at the last minute, they tried to make him into like a South American despot instead of Hitler.
Okay.
And so I threw it on the light box, and I could see all the places they'd whited out and all the dialogue they'd changed to make him not Hitler, which was really cool. But I think maybe the most instructive thing is I own a couple of Frank Miller roughs from Sin City, from
Okay.
the Big Fat Kill, and Sin City sort of represents to a lot of I think this to a lot of Frank Miller fans this sort of like dividing line when he started becoming more stark and more
Hmm.
reductionist in his style, um, more minimalist. But in those roughs, you can and I own a Dark Knight Strikes Again page like this too. It's a rough as well. You can see him drawing every last detail of like the mechanisms of a gun before turning it into a
Hmm.
silhouette. You know,
uh,
and I have a Dark Knight page like that too, where you can see Batman. You can see every like he's roughed out every bit of Batman's anatomy and Batman's form, and then the final page, it's the black cape. That's all you see.
hmm.
You know, he's a silhouette basically. But Frank still works through that stuff, so it's right. You know, so
Yeah.
to the untrained eye, it looks like Frank is drawing less. He's not. He's choosing to present less of his drawing. And that was really instructive to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things whenever I see original art, which, as someone who, primarily, at least with pages, works digitally these days, I do kind of miss,
Yeah.
just seeing a lot of that stuff happen, and all that, because people do have their preliminaries and their roughs, and they share it and all that, but just seeing all, like, just the paper getting worn down
Yeah.
and like little patches put in and stuff like that. There's definitely that
Like
just
every Kirby page I own has like a coffee ring on it where he set his mug of coffee in the margin.
yeah, just stuff like that, that I miss. And again, even though I work primarily on my iPad now, um I still want to, like, eventually, hopefully one day, get back to just at least doing some stuff on a board.
You
I
you have
know
to be
yeah,
you have
but
to be like Stegman and like recognize when something has resale value. You do it on the
yeah,
paper.
I not necessarily I did that, but with the second issue of Even the Helsings, like, it's the first issue, we had people asking, like, "Oh, is there original art?" Because there was no original art tier for the
Yeah.
Kickstarter. I'm like,
By the way,
"No, it's
that's
all
always my
digital."
favorite tier of any Kickstarter is the
Yeah,
original art tier.
and I'm like, "No, there's no." So then I'm thinking, like, well, maybe for the next issue, I'll do a couple pages, and I did one page. It was the one splash page in the book with Evie staking a vampire or whatever. It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun to do. I loved having it. No one bought it, but it was still fun for me to do and all that.
You'll want to
And I
keep it
ended up
though.
giving it to our editor because he was such a huge help with the campaign anyway, as a thank you. But it's like, that's definitely on my mind though. Like, okay, this is a pretty significant page. Like, um, and I definitely want to do that. But you know, for myself, strictly speaking, like, my life right now is like, I can't really set up my board and work because my work time is so scattered throughout the
Right.
day.
I remember that
But
time.
once my youngest is in, like, full-time kindergarten this fall, I'll actually have, like, a good solid chunk in my day where there's, no kids, so I can pull out the board, I can pull out the nib, I can pull, yeah, I
Your
can
whole
safely pull these things out.
your whole world will come into bloom again.
Yeah, yeah, and so hopefully I'll be able to do some things like that, because I have other projects I want to do that I definitely want to just do, like, ink on paper for. But you're, as our mutual bud Ramon Villalobos likes to say, you're old school.
Yes.
Your pencil paper. Did you ever flirt with, like, doing digital stuff, or you're just like, nah?
Yeah. There's um, like I used to do a lot of experimental comics when I was like much younger, and
Mhm.
there was a lot of multimedia stuff involved in those, and collage and xerography and stuff like that. So it seemed like doing stuff with the computer seemed like really natural. Like Dave
Mhm.
McKean's a big hero of mine, and seeing how he made that leap to digital
Yeah.
stuff was enticing to me. But there's two things going on here. One is I always want to have paper. I always want to
Mhm.
have a piece of art at the end.
Mhm.
Uh, well, maybe there's three things. I love like the tactile feel of paper. Like I
Mhm.
have to get
Yeah.
into a mess and like get out of it to feel like I've made a drawing.
Yeah.
And I like not being able to undo things. I like
Mhm.
having to like fight my way out of a mistake.
Mhm.
Um, and also the third thing is like I don't know if I don't know if you've noticed this as you've gotten older, but your free time gets just
Mhm.
eaten away.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
the idea of me taking off like 3 weeks to learn Clip
Mhm.
Studio or something, like I can't take 3 weeks off. I got work to do.
No.
I know it would make me faster, and I know it would open up new like new aesthetic aspects of my work that I haven't considered yet.
Mhm.
But I don't like I don't have the time to learn it right now. Do you know what I
No,
mean?
I totally get it. I flirted with digital with, like, I had like the original like little cheap, just on the desk pen and tablet thing,
Yeah.
not a screen. And then I had a real cheap Yanova whatever screen that barely worked, but it was good enough to like do corrections and stuff on and stuff like that. And then I got one of these Huion screens, which is like a good budget thing compared to a Wacom, and that
Right.
screen was fine. But the pens were always really jank. They
Yeah.
always were like the barrier for everything. And then when 2020 came, I just decided to like just follow Mike Norton's uh, method, what he did when he was trying to go to digital. Just pick something and do it. Just do one
Yeah.
project digitally, get it done. And so I got my iPad and I said, hey, who wants to do some short stories for real cheap? And then that just kind of like went going from there. And I went through a lot of stuff mentally to like do all the art and all that, but it really opened up a lot for me when I found the right brush and the right
Right.
settings that felt like it was when I was using a manual tool. Now, when I go back to do like commissions and sketches and stuff on paper, there's definitely the relearning curve a little bit. You know, I find like with digital, I do a lot of like I'll switch my pen, my brush to an eraser, so I can just like use the same brush
Yeah.
strokes, but like take away the blacks and do stuff like that and
Right.
carve it away. Not as easy to do
No,
when you're
it's hard
at
because
least
like
I don't have like
I
yeah
use that technique myself. Like I want to draw back into dark areas with white, and it's
yeah
something like my inkers and I had like gone back and forth about like how to do that. And
yeah
some like Andy Parks does it in Photoshop, and Eric Gapster does it by hand. Like
yeah
he'll actually like physically use white ink and draw back into the black areas where I indicate it, and um, it's it's not as easy as what you're talking about, but
no
uh,
no not especially since I've you know I'm fairly comfortable with a brush pen. I'm pretty comfortable with a nib. An actual brush, my hands are too shaky. Like
yeah,
I
mine
just
too.
like I just don't have the steadiness that's required. And that helps a lot. The digital thing helps out a lot with that too. But you know, I've definitely been guilty of the trying to like rotate my paper or zoom in on my paper.
Yeah,
At first I see people talk about that. I'm like, they're just having a silly joke or whatever. And then you
you
do
become a
it enough times,
cyborg.
you're like, Jesus, what's wrong with me?
You've been assimilated.
Yeah. So, but for me, I feel like it was worth it just because of just how my work time was set up, because I can go
Yeah,
bring my iPad wherever I got to go and get
whatever
stuff done.
whatever it takes to get you to make comics is kosher.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I
But,
don't I don't I don't look down on anybody's work methods at all.
I am interested to see like what Phil Hester looks like with digital tools, like just being able to just go full
It,
ham on it.
I can
But
tell
though
you
I
right now,
totally get your point.
it would become even less commercial.
But maybe less commercial, but I think most of us will probably love it more or
We'll
love it
see.
one day, right? One day.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't want to keep you too long. But is there anything right now that you want to talk about? You're working on that you want to plug? 'Cause you've got
Well,
such a laundry list of just like amazing books under your belt, and
uh, I I have a bunch of stuff that I can't talk about. Um, but right now, I think on the stands right now, I think the new issue of Green Arrow is still my issue, the one that I wrote
okay,
and drew. I mean, didn't write, the one that I drew and the cover that I penciled and inked. Um, so I think that's still in number 8, Green Arrow number 8.
okay.
Um, and outside of that, there's like I said, a bunch of there. I have a oh, no, I can't say that. Anyway, I have I have
I
a
probably should have
regular.
asked you before I asked you to come on. Like, oh, is there something particularly you want to promote? Like, I can't talk about anything. That's okay.
Yeah,
But
like
that's
I
fine.
feel
That's fine.
stupid.
You know.
Like I have like a thing I've been working on for like 6 months that nobody knows about, and then
Hmm.
like a really special, awesome thing that will be announced pretty soon, and then a mini series with a great writer that everybody knows, that I can't talk about again. Oh, I know what I can talk about. I did a short story for DC's April Fools book,
Okay.
with Joshua Fialkov. We
Oh,
reunited. I
okay.
reunited with Fialkov, and it's a detective chimp story,
Oh,
um,
nice, nice.
which I think people
Uh,
enjoy.
you know what? Is there a character you haven't tackled yet that you're really like?
Yes, like everybody knows it. Uh, I love Ragman. I love Ragman, and I haven't got to work on Ragman. I like sneak him into cameos and backgrounds all the time, but I never got to work on him directly. And I also love the Doom Patrol, especially Robot Man, and I'd love to work on him. I'd like to get back to Marvel, and I love the Fantastic Four. I love all their like weird monster characters, Man
Hmm.
Thing, It the Living Colossus,
Hmm.
the Zombie. You know all those
Yeah,
characters.
yeah.
Uh, if it's weird, I like it. Wood God, you know.
Perfect, perfect. I have one last question, and I'll let you go to enjoy the rest of your evening, and that is, you have a very distinct style, and you have your inkers. You have Eric Gapster, fantastic artist in his own right.
Yeah,
Um, Some Kind of Super is a book my kids have and love, um, and Andy Parks, obviously. Is there an inker, you know, past or present, that you're like, I really want to see what they look like over me?
yeah. Well, that I had that dream and it came true.
Oh, okay.
Um, I really wanted to. Like I kept telling Andy and Eric the whole time we were working together. The only anchor that I would ever leave them for was Klaus Janson, and uh, I did like a year and a half or 2 years ago. I did a half an issue of crossover, Donny Cates crossover
Yeah,
book
yeah.
that Kirkman wrote, and Kirkman wrote this story about Negan coming to life and killing him,
Hmm.
and uh, for some Eric was probably I think Eric was in a deadline crunch on Sort of Super, and
Okay.
so I was just asking some friends. I'm like, who do you think would be like available to ink me? And Sean Crystal, I go, somebody sort of like Klaus. And Sean Crystal was like, well, why don't you just ask Klaus? And I was like, am I allowed to do that? And and we did, and it was awesome. Like I got to see like Klaus was like one of the first inkers I could ever recognize as an inker, like
Hmm.
outside of pencil
Yeah.
art. And so it was like very intimidating, but also very satisfying to like get to work with him on at least 10 pages worth of stuff. But if I'm allowed to like go back through time, um, boy, it's tough because like a lot of the inkers from that, like from the distant past that I really admire, were also great pencilers in their own right.
Hmm.
And a lot of them, I think, would not cotton to my style. I
Hmm.
think they would be sort of feel compelled to fix it. Um, but of modern inkers, I would love to see my stuff handled by Steve Lealoa and
Okay. Yeah.
Bill Reinhold, Chicago guy, Bill Reinhold. I think Bill's like one of the best inkers ever. Um, uh, you can see him handle somebody as off the wall as Steve Ditko, and then
Hmm.
somebody as realistic as like Dougie Braithwaite,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he can he can like he can like connect with both of those styles and enhance them both without changing them, which is like
Hmm.
kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
And it's also because he's a really great artist in his own right. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think he's like one of the
He's
best
definitely an
living inkers.
unsung hero
Yeah. Oh
of
yeah,
inking
I think
and
he's
art in
superb.
general. But yeah, it's Steve Liahola. That, yeah. I
Yeah,
don't know.
him
Klaus
too. Steve
Janson
Lealoa
also
is
like, yeah.
like a top three. Like Gene Colan, I think is probably the hardest guy ever to ink in comics.
Mm-hmm.
and I think Steve is like a top 2 or 3 Gene Colan inker.
Awesome. Yeah. Klaus Janson was definitely the first inker I ever noticed was like on
Yeah,
somebody, and even and Tom Palmer was also like one
yeah,
of the first inkers I really noticed just because how he just made everything softer, I guess, or
yeah.
more
Tom
rounded.
makes he made everything more organic,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
And
and naturalistic. I think organic's not the right word. Naturalistic's the word.
yeah,
Like the light sources all seem natural,
yeah.
and the tones all seem natural and cohesive. And Tom's one of those people who's when he inks a job, it looks just as good in black and white as it does in color, which is
Mhm.
a really tough thing to pull
Yeah.
off, and he did it.
And maybe a bit of a hot take, but I always preferred him over Klaus on JR Jr. And
Oh, Tom Palmer over Klaus.
yeah, over
Well, that is a hot
JR
take.
Jr. Instead of not that it's a wide gap between the two, and by any means
Yeah,
whatsoever, but definitely like if I had to pick a preference, I think he just edges out
yeah.
for me. Um,
I think
but
Klaus. I think Klaus reinforces uh, Jr. Jr.'s strengths a little bit better. I
mhm,
think he picks up on and maybe you just maybe like that naturalism that Tom brings to stuff is like a good counterpoint
mhm,
to Ramita Jr.'s sort of like abstraction that he throws into his work.
yeah,
But Klaus, I think, bolsters so much of Ramita's sensibilities that I can't. I'll always have Klaus way ahead
yeah.
on Ramita.
The closest thing I can liken to is like it's asking me like, oh, well, Don, what do you love more, pizza or tacos? Like, well, I love tacos more, but I'm not gonna say no to fucking pizza. Like,
Taco pizza is the way to roll.
it's the both are great, and
Yeah.
but yeah. So awesome, awesome. Well, Phil, thank you so much for all your time. I really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Don.
I'd love to have you back on before too long when
When I
hopefully
have something I can talk about.
we have more things we could talk about. Maybe I need to start like mixing and matching guests and getting some other people on here so no one's stuck talking to me for the whole time. But again, yeah, it's been a blast getting to talk to you for a bit. And yeah, now's the time. Let everybody know where they can find you on social media, as if they don't know already.
Yeah, I'm on both Twitter and BlueSky as Phil Hester, and then Austin Hamlin, the guy we were talking about earlier, he runs my. I'm not on Facebook myself, but he runs a Facebook page, and you can get a hold. And he puts news up there and art, and also you can get a hold of me through that Facebook page. He'll relay it to me.
Awesome, awesome. All right, well, thanks again, Phil.
Thank you, Don.